Okay, so today I've got a very special guest, Nik Kleverov, and he is one of the first creatives to get his hands on Sora, which is OpenAI's new video model. And obviously, that's not the only reason I'm excited to talk to Nick. He's got like a really impressive background. He's worked at some top agencies like Bungie, Digital Kitchen. He was even involved in the judging process for the Emmy Awards, focusing on the motion titles. I believe that's all correct. At this time, you are Chief Creative Officer, Native Foreign. So why don't we chat a little bit about that? Like what you're doing now and kind of why did Native Foreign exist?
Yeah, thank you, Luke. Really nice to chat with you. Native Foreign is a hybrid creative agency production company that specializes in elevating stories with design. I come from a line of design, having been involved in a lot of main title sequences. Probably the most famous one is the Narcos sequence. So everything we do has an infusion of design at the heart of it. And when we started the agency, gosh, almost 6 years ago now, we wanted to just be able to tell really great stories and tell them in an elevated way. And somehow in the last 2 years, a lot of our traditional work has started becoming, dare I say, infused with AI and AI practices. And now we are a bit of a specialist in AI, and that has become a core business model for us is embracing AI technology and really seeing what we could do with storytelling using it.
Cool. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Like how did you first become interested in AI?
So my friend Chad, who was a client that became a friend, and we stayed friends even after he was no longer a client. And we hung out a lot and do a lot of stuff. And he's built companies himself as well. And he was the first one to actually show me Dolly, which was OpenAI's text to image generator back in the stone ages of 2022, the spring of 22. So, yeah, gosh, it was about 2 years ago now. And I remember just being totally blown away with being able to create whatever was in your mind. And as a creative director, I've spent so much time over the years trying to find like the perfect image for something, to explain an idea, sell through a vision to a client or a partner. That's how I immediately instantly started using it, was just within decks being able to get your vision out in a fraction of the time. We were able to be so much more productive, create more decks, create more strategies. And yeah, since then we've just started integrating it more and more. We had pitched essentially a short film where we used all AI generated imagery to create this world. And so that was called Critters, Critters with a Z. Critters with a Z.tv is the site where you can watch it, and you can watch a little behind the scenes film of how we made it. But that was such an interesting experience because we created this world of critters, and they were all made with Dolly, obviously with a lot of out painting and in painting and a lot of manipulation. Like sometimes people think we just pressed a button and they came out, but just like any creative process, there was a lot of refining and back and forth and figuring it out. And then we made a short film, and the kind of the pitch is David Attenborough's Planet Earth crashes into a Monty Python sketch. And, this world of critters, it kind of, the cameras takes us through it all, which of course was done with humans. We took the images, we parallaxed them all, flew through them, kind of created our own spaces. And then these critters all talk back to the omniscient narrator, and, they kind of devolve into petty squabbling. But also the critters, again, were facial maps and rigs, and we hooked them up to Unreal and we performed in that way. So even that first AI film thing was mostly traditional, truly. I mean, there was so much human input in between the voice talent and the writing and the story, and then the editing process and the VFX motion graphics process was pretty fun. And since then, that's really helped us think about how to use AI tools in creative work and where it makes the most sense, what's the most appropriate. And that's been our passion ever since.
That's amazing. Like I've seen that video and it's like it's really great what you've done with it. I didn't realize that was one of yours.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the producer of it. So my friend Chad, he is the writer director. But again, we brought in a writer from Bob's Burgers to help us, punch it up and add more comedy to it. And the other thing is, because we've been able to do more with these small teams, you know, I'm sure for that writer that I just mentioned, I'm sure this isn't a normal experience for him. But during the voiceover session, we had him on and we were like, hey, just throw funny lines into the chat and let's just spitball. So also being able to give that ability to a writer to have more input in that way, I bet was awesome and really fun. So, I think I'm optimistic because I think this technology is going to help us be able to tell more stories and to more people tell more stories, really.
Yeah. And is that I'm interested in finding out like how did this collaboration with OpenAI come about? Is that one of the reasons really they saw this work?
Oh, so I mean, the Critters thing, we did that and that went to a bunch of film festivals. I think we've been to like 15 now and we won various awards in several. That got us a lot of press. We actually didn't, and we didn't make that film until winter break of 22. And then we kind of noodled beginning of 23. And then it kind of really came out summer of 23. And, that was when we did a lot of that run with it. And then after that, we had the relationship with them. We did a couple other brand storytelling pieces for them. We did a film at the beginning of their first annual Dev Day. So right before Sam came out, or right after he walked out, there was a ChatGPT film that played, where basically we interviewed hundreds of people all over the world of all different types in just about their experience with ChatGPT in its first year. And we, put that together into a nice, poignant 3-minute piece. And that played basically at the beginning of Dev Day. And so, yeah, I think we have a good relationship with them. We've done several projects with them, more like unofficially like Critters, and then more officially like the brand storytelling things I mentioned. And so, yeah, I think that's probably why I was invited to be one of the artists that got to try. Also, I really am coming at it from maybe a kind of brand storytelling standpoint. I thought they did a really nice job of curating the artists that came out with stuff, because everyone had a little bit of a different field and medium and style. And the way I see my style is maybe a little bit more in that brand world, or I think about how it could influence our agency work in the future for sure.
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions that I was going to ask. So for anyone that doesn't hasn't seen OpenAI's website, so they invited kind of 5 or 6 different artists from different areas to create these films. And everyone did their own kind of thing. There was kind of one from Shy Kids and they made the balloon head one, which was very much a narrative. And then there was kind of Paul Drillo and he did his own kind of thing. There's one video I've seen where he's just I think it was his and it's the endless tunnel zoom, like, and everyone's like from we can pick up like these different like kind of capabilities of what Sora can do. But the way that I thought that you came at it, and I was going to ask you about this, is that maybe you came a bit from more of a commercial angle. So from what I see looking at it, there's some storytelling elements in it. There's some shots that you could easily drop into a film. There was some that were kind of maybe more special effects. There's one where there's a car floating in the ocean, there's kind of more abstract ones. There's even one with a can that shows like can't remember what you put on it, something salt soda
Salts.
or something. Yeah. Yeah, so it seems like you were really pushing it and thinking about how can I use this in a commercial setting. Would that be right?
Of course, it's what I do. Love to be creative and tell original stories as well. But a lot of what I do is tell brand stories, do commercials, things like that. And I've actually seen this interesting trend of lowering budgets. A lot of brand budgets have been getting smaller. A lot of brand budgets have been going to in-house agencies. And while we partner with in-house agencies all the time, it's definitely we've definitely seen an interesting shift in what gets greenlit. So I'm excited about AI because I actually think it's going to help more things get greenlit because more things are going to be able to be explored because those things aren't so overwhelming to imagine how they're going to get the budgets together to explore on the brand side, especially in a world where we just it feels like we just need more content than ever. So yes, mine is very much a montage. My Sora, initial clip was showcasing different moments from different things. And actually, each one of those things that were showcased, I have full pieces of, or at least in progress pieces of. So yeah, like I can't wait till I get to show people the whole salt soda clip because it's pretty out there. But it was really, definitely there's a car, but I tried to think about it in ways that isn't just replacing what's possible in real life. So I was thinking about more of like an amphibian car that, that there's that shock, surprise and delight where you think you're looking at waves, but a car emerges from it. That's not possible to go pick up a camera and shoot right now. So, everything that I was doing, or even like my shoe example, had these little miniature, I don't know, construction workers or like shoemakers or something that were kind of dancing around this. So, yeah, again, a little bit more of a MoGraph type of a shot idea, definitely. And I just have loved playing with it, seeing all the wild stuff that we can do in the future with this tech.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you said that I really like, and one of them is kind of like exploring this idea of what else is possible, like not really recreating kind of things that we could do with a camera in real life. But there are advantages that you touched on, like getting projects greenlit that, might be a little bit more risky for a client to get a huge budget together and try it, whereas you can kind of pull that together and show them what it might look like using tools like Sora.
Exactly. Whether it's just in a visualizing point of the process, whether it's like more iterative in concepts or whether it's starts to delve into the finished actual work, or it's a little bit of a mix of both. I could see it going either way, really.
Yeah. So how long did you have access to Sora? How long have you been working with it behind the scenes?
I've had it for several weeks now and, definitely had some time to play around with it before the announcement came out. And it's almost this interesting feeling of getting to walk into a candy shop as a kid with everything in it and you don't even know what to do first. It's like you have so many the endless possibilities. You can't eat all the candy, so you have to start choosing. Am I going to have like the Coca-Cola gummies or am I going to have this, like the blue whale gummies or the peach rings? Like what am I going to do? And really I found myself starting to just explore ideas almost one at a time and drill that idea to a point where I'd assemble an edit of something rough and be like, okay, cool. I think I understand where this is going, even if it's not finished, or get a rough sketch of something out, and then start to explore other things. And so that's been my approach. And I think that's why my montage has also so many different types of looks. I wanted to push the looks. I wanted to push and see what types of genres and what kind of film styles it can do. So that's why I have like a film noir thing next to maybe something more like a traditional kind of vintage 1950s look thing next to something that looks way more futuristic or modern. So it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be able to kind of relate to that. Like, probably most people listening to this have used some level of AI, and like the first time you sit down with kind of a text to image model, you're like, "Oh, great, I can do anything in the world. What should I do?" Like,
Yeah. But the interesting thing about Sora to me is I actually think more in motion than I do in just images. So, as useful as Dolly or any of the other text to image generators have been for me, Sora is just a whole different level because, I'm the kid that had a camera since I was 5 years old, and I filmed everything. And I really think in sequences and in stories and in more motion of events happening, and the way that Sora thinks and the way that it's able to get my thoughts out is so much more impactful and meaningful to me than any image generator. Because I'll say that, as awesome as Runway's kind of taking an image, or Gen 2, it's like taking an image and then adding some motion to it. Whereas Sora really feels like it's thinking in the motion. It's thinking in X, Y, and Z space. And it's almost like it's visualizing the scene, and it's thinking and tracking that person or object from here to there. And it's making full sense of it. And so, with keyframing, I can actually really start to tell some sort of a story, which is so exciting. And for me, I'm a filmmaker at heart, so I'm always thinking of moving picture. So all the image generators, I'm always like, okay, cool, this is a cool first step, but now I gotta bring it to life, just like what we did with Critters. We made these characters, but we still had to do so much legwork to get them to life. I feel like some of that is now been really helped with the iterative process and being able to explore those kinds of ideas in motion.
Can you tell us about the process? What's it like working with Sora?
Working with Sora is like being able to get your thoughts out into moving image, not without some, issues, just like any AI tool, right? I mean, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that happens that, you just have to figure out your way around, just like everyone has with the image stuff. And also, again, it's like this is the first iteration, right? This is the worst it's ever going to be. So it's just going to keep getting better from here. And it's pretty intuitive. And I'm still in a little bit of a state of disbelief about it, honestly, because it's been such a valuable tool, and I can see the future, and I can see what's going to happen with it and how we're going to really be able to supercharge our creative with it. So I'm pumped.
I'm not sure how much you are allowed to say, but people have kind of a lot of questions like, how long does it take to generate a video? Like, what's the ratio of like stuff you don't use to do use? Like all these kind of things. Can you speak about any of that?
Well, I'm not sure how much of that stuff I'm supposed to talk about. What I'll say is it's neither as quick nor as slow as you'd think. And just like any AI process, I feel like it takes a moment to drill into an idea or a thought, but once you have it, you can kind of iterate from there. And yeah, I mean, it's just like nothing's perfect, and it's not like it's replacing everything. I think it's a tool that's going to be additive to teams, to projects, to everything. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Cool, thanks for that. I think you've already touched on this. I know from the website that it does say that there are image to video features, so you can upload an image or however it works. You can take an image and animate it. There's also other features on their website where you can extend videos backwards and forwards. So that creates this weird thing where you can create a seamless loop. Did you have access to those? Did you get to play with kind of these other kind of another one they have is like blending two videos together?
All I've been doing is the more tech stuff, and I haven't been able to do the image to video, so I can't unfortunately comment on it.
Cool. No worries.
How could you see yourself using this? I mean, this is obviously intersects what you do in your world. Are you
That
excited about it? Are you nervous, or like what are your general thoughts about it?
I am equally excited and terrified. So I love kind of new tech, this is something that I just love playing with. And there's something you said earlier that's okay, so it's exciting, you can do anything, like you can explore your curiosity, that's the excitement part of it. And then the more negative side, the fear-based side of it would be, as you mentioned, like shrinking budgets. So say we've got an amazing project with a a client who's got a huge budget. They have the ability to spend a huge budget. So I wonder how tools like this are going to affect the pricing model. Like, if someone can do in a day what used to take a team of 30, are we still able to maintain value-based pricing, or will prices drop? And like, how does this efficiency affect jobs and pricing and all
I
that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I've seen prices of budgets going down for years now. I mean, even before any of this AI stuff was an issue or has had come up at all. So I've been seeing this. I guess I'm of the mindset that I'd rather have them greenlight jobs than not. So, job is a job versus not having a job at all. And, none of our employees or, collaboratives have been displaced. If anything, some of the redundant tasks have been eliminated. And now I have designers exploring cool stuff, actually getting to be more creative. So I guess, and I'm sure I'm biased, but I'm very optimistic about this whole thing because I know that you need to have a very extensive knowledge of your craft to be able to speak with any LLM properly. And so, I don't think it eliminates school. I don't think it eliminates talent. I think that people that understand these things are going to have the most success with them. And I think they're going to be using these tools. But I don't think that like everything is going to come just be eliminated. And I also don't think it's replacing 30 people's what they can do in a day or whatever, one person or something doing what 30 people can do. I don't really think it's like that. I think and I've been messing with it long enough that I've seen some of the limitations and I really think about it as a tool more so than like, great, everything's replaced with this now. It's all done. So yeah, I hear you like, because I know I'm also, a creative and I think about this kind of stuff all the time. But yeah, I'm of the bright, futuristic optimism world is where I'm landing.
That's cool. I mean, it's the uncertainty, and with uncertainty comes fear. So I think it's just interesting to talk to people, you know, and discuss like where they land on the subject.
Of course.
So let's talk a little bit about so what opportunities does Sora bring? Like, what can Sora do that, we can't do today with it not being released?
Yeah. I mean, definitely what I mentioned about the way that it seems to think and it seems to process clips and simulate situations. The other tools that are out there that are text to video that I'm aware of are definitely not nowhere as close as this to being able to tell sequences and tell stories. So I think as Sora gets released, we're going to start to see a lot of creators be able to at least tell semblances of stories. And I'm also at this point, and I'm sure you feel it too, Luke, but everybody kind of has been creating these like runway movies. I've made one too, and like you start to get the sense of the cadence of them. They look cool, and the motion is always kind of like we're like living in this slow motion world of like trailer shots that are kind of like slowly moving around. And it's awesome and it's cool and it's a step in the process. But I think we're going to be able to see more nuanced and interesting stories. I also think in the process of that, people are going to see limitations and it's going to become apparent what those are. Maybe they'll get fixed. Maybe people find creative ways around them. So I'm excited about all of that because just in my initial test with it, thinking about how I can use it, I already have in my mind some ideas of best uses of it and places where probably not quite yet. But definitely, I think it's going to empower and democratize creativity to more and more people.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on one of the things at the moment. So, I mean, the the alternatives to Sora are kinda limited, like you've mentioned these kind of, like, fixed shots that give the, like it's more the illusion of motion, like a camera will do a slow zoom in or a character will slowly move, but, I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, we've got a lot more tech that's just doing lip syncing built into these things. We've got kind of software that you can take a still image and kind of upload a 3D model and have them move in that kind of motion, so it's all advancing.
Have you
Um,
played with the Runway generative audio or the Pika, like sound design stuff? Have you been messing around with any of that?
Very briefly, I've used Pika. It's an interesting idea that you can generate a video and it will automatically generate the sound effects to it without you being kind of involved in that process. So it's pretty much like rolling the dice at this point.
Everything is to a degree with all the AI tools. I mean, I think this is the infancy of all of this stuff. So I think, yeah, there's still a lot of that configuration and testing what works and what doesn't work. I will say, I mean, I came up as an editor and God, I hate looking for sound effects. I mean, it's such a pain in the ass. So, if there's a tool that can crack that and just help me save my life and time from having to do that, like that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and that is one of the well, thus far they've not added any sound to Sora. Have you seen Suno? Like
Yeah. You know,
that's really
wild
incredible. Like
stuff.
the version 3 of that released in the last couple of weeks that
I
you can
couldn't
just
believe it. My buddy was showing me some stuff. I haven't messed around with Suno yet. I messed around with the Google AI test kitchen for this film I made called The Kiss 1.0, where I basically adapted Anton Chekhov story called The Kiss, and it's about this Russian military soldier in the 19th century that goes to this party and he has this encounter with a woman and she mistakenly kisses him. She doesn't. She thought he was someone else. She runs away. He can't remember what she looks like, and it drives him mad. So it's like very typical Russian style tragic literature. But I basically used ChatGPT and created a first person prose type of recap of that, and then converted it to Russian language, which I speak, but very much like an American because even though I'm an immigrant, I grew up here. And then it created the images with Dolly, and then brought them to life with Runway, and used a myriad of kind of AI tools. And very much something I want to explore with Sora is like, okay, the reason I called it 1.0 is I want to keep creating versions of the same film, but then using updated tools as they kind of continue to evolve, and so seeing the evolution of those through time. So the 2.0 one will hopefully be, knock on wood, will be created with Sora. And yeah, I mean, I think it's going to elevate everyone's storytelling ability in a way.
that's a really interesting idea, kind of so you've got a story and you find it resonates and then kind of updating it with the technology and, like, you could never refilm, like, you could never go and reshoot another like a traditional film, but that's a interesting concept.
That's the thing. I've had this idea for years to make like a 2-3 minute interpretation of this short film that's like set in what 19th century Russia. Like, how the hell would I shoot that? Who's gonna pay for me to shoot this? Like, there's no way I could have done it. And I mean, look, the film that I made, Kiss 1.0, like it looks like an AI film. And I leaned into the fact that AI has been, especially some of the models that I was using were not great at faces and stuff because it's the story of this person that can't remember a woman's face. So it really like leans into that, and I feel like it works for the story and the creative. But yeah, I mean, now I get to explore these ideas. That's honestly a lot of what I've been doing with Sora. Some of this stuff is like scripts or ideas or concepts I've had 20 years ago that I was like, just have been in a vault because I can't do anything with it. But now I can, which is amazing. It's just so exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you'd be perfectly placed to answer this question. So there's criticisms of kind of AI films and them all being kind of generic, boring trailer. So now this technology is becoming available. Like, what makes a great story?
The storyteller. I think the way that the story is told, I think the message of the story is important. But not everyone is a storyteller. I think that's going to become apparent. But those that have the knack and have the ability to do that, I think are really going to be empowered as these tools continue to evolve.
I mean, we should, in theory, see a much more diverse range of stories when the technical limitations fall away.
100%. 100%.
Cool. So we touched on this one a little bit as well. Like, how do you think this might play into the design process? So a traditional design process might be kind of concept or scripting concept, and then you do like some storyboard, maybe some loose sketches. But now this kind of technology and all the other ones that are emerging, they you can in theory go from concept to high fidelity. Um, how do you think that'll affect creatives process? And do you think it's a good idea to go from, what would have been a sketch to a kind of almost a completed video?
I think most of the tools that have been in our ethos have been more in the post production and finishing side of things. There have not been a lot of tools in the iterative and concepting phase, which I think is what AI is enabling us to explore. So I do think that it's kind of interesting to just start iterating at stuff that looks like it's 80% of the way there. I know that when I posted my clip, there was a lot of people saying, and I left it in, obviously, bicycle repair shop because it doesn't say bicycle repair correctly. But it's like, well, yeah, but think about what that shot is, and all I have to do is some comp magic, some comp sauce to make that say bicycle repair instead of creating a shot from scratch with that much dimensionality and depth and just vibe. I think the vibe that Sora is able to create is pretty fantastic, and I think once you drill down into a look, it's able to really kind of help you help you express that vibe. So however, I mean, again, I have tried some typography type things with it. And when you say design, I also do always think about type and things like that. It's got a long way to go for that. And I think that I still love all art designers in drafting out the initial things, the kind of old school way, but being able to get to some results a little bit quicker using some of these tools. And I'm not just speaking about Sora now, I'm speaking about all sorts of, AI tools. Yeah, again, you have to know the crap. You have to know this stuff to know what is correct and what isn't correct and when to break the rules and why to break the rules when you do that. So, it's pretty funny to think about what the future will be. I know some people are like, "Oh, well, you don't need designers anymore at all," but I don't think that way at all. I think you need them more than ever.
We're definitely like at the jagged edge of AI, and what I mean by that is like it seems very good at some things. Like Sora is a good example. Like it's almost indistinguishable from video at this point. But then you look at other areas of AI and it can't do maths. Like a large language model can't do maths, and there's just weird things within it like that. And so on the outside, it might look like Sora can do the job of like a producer, a director, a designer, whatever you want it to be. But really, the storytelling aspect, it just can't do that at the moment because storytelling's about, it's creating emotion in someone. It's something that as a human you resonate with, and the emotion has no, like, AI has no feelings. Like, how can it really tell whether a story resonates or not? Like, it can't. So it is gonna enable us to tell these stories, but we might be a lot further away than kind of the one hit an AI button and it creates a, film that people want to watch. We might be a lot further away than that than we see, than it looks like.
Yeah, and I don't want to just watch stuff made by AI personally. I mean, I want to use these tools to tell great stories, but I don't want this to replace the people that I love working with and creating stories with.
Nah. And it's often in the creative process that you come up with kind of ideas and the idea changes and it becomes something that it wasn't to begin with. And there was one shot in your video and you shared, and it's this kind of it's a close up of a guy and the camera's kind of spinning, but he's like in center. And then something passes in front of the camera and it like transitions to a woman. And I was wondering if that was something if you'd done in the edit, if you prompted for that, or that was kind of just a happy accident that came out of the software.
Prompted for that. So, I wanted to create part of what I was also trying to mess with is the idea of images, passing frame, blocking, things like that. I mean, also in the field, sometimes we're still doing the kind of Vaseline on the edges thing. We're still shooting sometimes through a prism or some sort of, if blocking device to mess with the camera or give a mood or a vibe. And so that one, as part of this film noir idea, yes, that was kind of planned to show this kind of man looking for someone, and something passes by, and it's like the woman he was looking for, kind of a thing. So a little bit of that noir intrigue. But again, yeah, like I have a whole film noir thing that I made, which again, it's like every one of those things is a glimpse into an idea that I've been exploring. So that's what's so fun is, again, I've been wanting to make a neo noir type of thing for forever, but how am I going to do that?
Let's switch gear a little bit, and this is a bit more complicated. So I want to speak about kind of copyright, and I guess you're not able to use this in your client projects at the moment, but you've probably used other kinds of AI, like the critters, for example, that was AI generated. So how do you have conversations with your clients about kind of copyright?
I think any client that we talk about AI work with, we're very upfront about saying, hey, this is the wild, wild west of new tools and technology. And so, you could either say, hey, we don't want you to use AI at all, and we won't. Or, yes, we're interested in exploring this. And, we just need to make sure that the client knows that, hey, there may be something that comes down at some point. Right now, I mean, there's no regulations on that kind of stuff. I also am of the ilk that, part of your job as a creative is to understand the world of IP and content and other things out there. So I mean, like, I could make Mickey Mouse rollerblading down a sidewalk in Times Square with Photoshop and After Effects if I wanted to. So if an AI machine were to accidentally spit that out to me, I'm I should know that I'm not going to be using that to put into my finished work. I will say that I think Open in general has done a pretty nice job of putting blocks on all types of, attempts to make references or imagery of, people or things or whatever that are super famous that have any restrictions on them. And I think that's probably where we'll end up. I think in the end, we'll end up in a world where if you own IP and you don't want it in the data sets, you're going to file the paperwork or whatever you're going to have to do, and they're not going to use it, and it's going to be virtually impossible for it. I mean, obviously in this time, I know that there was some problems with with Midjourney. That was, like the whole watermarks were ending up in images and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm always very upfront about it. I always say when we're going to use some sort of tool, and I think it's interesting to see who wants to do it, who doesn't. And I think that, it's also our job to make sure that we're not like trying to rip anyone off.
Yeah. It's definitely like there's a gray area. There are the rules that exist around copyright. Obviously, there's two different elements to it. There's kind of intellectual property, and we all understand that you can't copy what somebody else has created. But then there's kind of the other elements like the data that goes into it and people having the right to not use their data. And there are rules kind of like in the EU that have just coming into effect, that will come into effect over the next 2 years. So it's still a gray area, definitely.
Totally. I mean, who knows where it'll end up? I'm looking at it every day and trying to see, what's going to happen.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of do you have any opinion on we're getting to the point where it's going to be difficult to tell the difference between kind of AI generated, well, it already is, the difference between AI generated video and reality. Do you have kind of any thoughts on that? How might that impact society?
Yeah, I think about this sometimes. I wonder if there's going to need to be some sort of identifier. And I don't know if it's like a hologram or holographic type of element, or it's like a digital watermark that it can be almost like proven that something was really filmed in a place at a certain time. It's like geotagged, it's time stamped. Heck, maybe it's even put to the blockchain, into some
Yeah.
LQ that's like not crazy gas intensive. Yeah, I think about it for sure. I mean, it's an interesting place to be at. I think the we're gonna have to have more reliance on news sources, and those news sources are gonna have to be really held to the highest standard. So I think that there is probably going to be a lot of technology that comes out of this that's around, truth or what is real or what really happened.
Yeah, I don't know how we do that because I mean blockchain might be a solution, but obviously that's too kind of um, processing data intensive at the moment. But
Yeah.
anything you can add to a video with AI or watermarked, you can create software to remove it as well. So then it just becomes this kind of eternal kind of war back and forth. Someone does this, someone does that.
What about like, yeah, I mean, definitely limitations, but there's also like, I know that there's like other deep fake stuff that people are doing all the time. So, I mean, this is tech that's out there. How do you put a clamp down on it? I also wonder if, you know, do community notes matter? Like, I don't know, if someone made a video of somebody saying something that they didn't say, especially if it's a, political figure or public figure, I think it would be pretty quickly shut down or, made known as of right now that, hey, this isn't real. But yeah, I'm curious moving forward what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some interesting use cases. I mean, there's an AI news channel now that's like running 24/7. It writes well, I don't know who writes the stories, but it's AI presented by news presenters. So, like, even news can be AI generated. And there's another story about a guy that was on a Zoom call, a team Zoom call with kind of five other people, and they were all these employees, but they deep faked it. So it was never a Zoom call. He's on the Zoom call and the CEO is like, "Can you transfer this money?" And he does it and they've robbed him like millions of pounds.
Oh
Like,
my god.
yeah. So
That's
there's gonna be crazy things that happens. So, I mean, obviously we've been talking and thinking about kind of AI video for kind of the work that we do, which is paid by clients, kind of commercial work. Do you think there's any other kind of uses for Sora that we've not considered?
I'm so lost in my own little world of creating things. I haven't really thought about it, but I'll give that some thought.
Yeah, so I mean, something I've noticed is that the parent company of TikTok, they're called ByteDance, and they've got their own video model. Facebook have their own video model, but these models aren't released to the public at the moment. Obviously, then Sora dropped, and then, like, the quality level's blown them out of the water. But there are a lot of companies, like I'd put Amazon in this group as well. They're working on these video models, but they're not releasing them to the public. So, you know, I'm curious about why they're doing that. What is their goal? And
Talking about these like influencers that are like sitting in a car selling something and like people are using AI to do it or something.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, are they just creating these to create ads to sell things to us? That would probably be the
Like,
logical
so
conclusion.
banal, it's just so boring. Like, really? Like, that's what we're gonna do? I don't know. I just can't really get behind that because it's like, come on. Like, there's so much to this world. I don't really want to look at a picture of or a video of a person in the car selling me a skin cream or something.
No, I hope we can come up with something a bit more creative. Cool. So there's one last question I wanted to ask you before I let you go. We've touched on it a little bit before, and I think a lot of creatives will feel this way. So there's this excitement and this fear element to AI. So what would your message be to other creatives? Like, how do you think people should think about AI and how should they approach it?
If you are unsure, I think the number one thing you should do is just get trials of some of the main accounts and just try things. Try ideas, just, explore creative and you'll start to see what some of the limitations are. I think also, honestly, like if you sit there for hours trying to work on something and trying to get a shot right and it's not working, I think like the fear kind of starts to dissipate when you're like, oh yeah, okay, actually this is a little tricky, isn't it? And it becomes a little bit more like the traditional creative process that we're used to, which is excitement about an idea and then the process of bringing that idea to life where everything feels a bit like it's all shit and then it all kind of comes together in the end and works out. So, I think they're tools. I think that our future workflows as creatives are going to be really helped out by like a suite of AI tools that we're going to use and implement into our traditional knowledge and practice and things that we've learned from experience. And that's where I see things going. I definitely would encourage people that are in the creative field to just continue exploring these. And, there's a lot of time still and a lot of room for improvement. And also, for the scarier stuff, I think there's a lot of room for regulation still where things will go into some sort of regulation at some point. Like it's inevitable, I think. So, that's the other thing is just being able to explore and stay ahead of the curve.
I think that's a good message. Tools like this, and as AI progresses, like 2 to 5 years from now, it won't be so much about the technical skills. It'll be much more about the kind of concept and your ideas and the creativity. And people are going to be able to get pretty weird. Isn't that what creatives really want? They want to be able to explore this creativity and not be kind of boxed in by a client saying you have to tick X, Y, and Z box.
Oh yeah. It's gonna get weird. It's gonna be beautiful.
Fantastic. Well, I've had a great time talking to you. I could talk to you all day. I'll be respectful of your time. So maybe we can do this again in the future.
Love that, Luke. Thanks for bringing me on. Appreciate it.
All right. Nice one.
If you like this video, you love our wiki newsletter, sign up at designresources.ai.